that in my life. I 21 years old and I see that.
From the time I live in that area, guys, first time I see that happen.
It's just a disaster.
Amazing. I was principal of Mahaut one time. I have never seen that in my entire stay in Mahaut.
Nothing we can do about it. It's God's will.
At 5 a.m. on Wednesday, 28th September 2011, Tropical Depression Ophelia was located approximately 230 miles northeast of Dominica. At this time, Ophelia was packing maximum sustained winds of about 35 miles per hour and was moving gradually westwards at about 3 miles per hour. At this time, the system was very disorganized. It produced showers and thunderstorms over Martinique and Dominica overnight. At 8 a.m. at the Canefiled airport, recorded rainfall up to 2 inches, while Melvin Hall recorded 1 inch, and there were reports of flooding at Layu that morning. At 6 a.m., the Meteorological Service reported that the forecast for the day would be overcast with showers and rainfall up to 4 inches were expected. Residents were asked to exercise caution in areas prone to flooding, landslides, and fallen rocks. As the morning progressed, convection associated with Tropical Depression Ophelia continued to meander around the island chain. It was indicated on the Meteor France radar that a cluster of clouds associated with the depression was situated over the southwestern coast of Dominica and stuck there for several hours. At 11 a.m., Ophelia was then upgraded to a tropical storm. This means that between 5 a.m. and 11 a.m., the system went through some transition. At that time, Ophelia was located about 240 miles northeast of Dominica. By midday, rivers and ravines along the southwestern coast of the island began to overflow towards the street. Based on rainfall data at the Pont Cassé rain gauge, there was an accumulation of 10 inches during a 24-hour period. At the Springfield rain gauge, similar indications, 10 inches. At the Canefiled Airport, 6 inches was recorded, while at the Melville Airport, 0.2 inches was recorded for the same period. 10 inches of rainfall is equivalent to about 257 millimeters, which is approximately what we would have received for 1 month in the Canefiled area. From the analysis of the rainfall records at Poncassé and Springfield, it shows that there was a peak period between 10 and 11 p.m. that evening at both areas, while there was a second peak of highest intensity between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. at Poncassé and 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. at Springfield. This would explain why the flooding occurred on the western coast later during that day. These events can happen any time of year, but they may be more drastic when associated with tropical cyclones, storms, and hurricanes. We may remember a similar event happened in 1999 where the north of the island was cut off due to heavy downpours one afternoon, and this occurred outside the hurricane season. This teaches us one lesson, that we should always listen to the weather reports, as on the morning of September 28th, the weather forecast indicated that we were to experience excess rainfall that day in association with Tropical Depression Ophelia.
Amazing. I was principal of Mahaut one time, and I've never seen that in my entire stay in Mahaut. Let me say, I've never seen that at all in my life. It's almost hypnotic. I just cannot believe what I'm seeing, as though I'm driven.
nothing like that in my life.
From the time I live in that area, guys, first time I see that happen in my life. I myself, I never see that. That was what you calling a disaster, complete disaster. Water, all kind of anger. I myself, I don't even know what to say because I see too much in my eye.
Cannot pass. What that down by the savannah is that can go Rosewood. Nothing can go up village, nothing can come down village.
And that's in Campbell, right?
Yes, it's in Campbell.
Okay, great.
I mean, it's a disaster, disgrace, because I think we should have had some information to expect something like that.
Yeah, let me see, 2 children, 3 of them, come from school asthmatic, and so they wanted some assistance, so they come right here. So my friend had his boat, so they talked to him, and then we brought them to the Coast Guard base.
So you took the children from Mahaut to the Coast Guard base with your boat because the road was blocked?
Right.
I need some help. I live in Mahaut Restaurant. Can you give us me and my mother little assistance?
I was not there, but when I come, I see they call me and tell me river going down in my house. So when I came, I see water, the whole river was inside.
Well, the river slip from over there. River slip from over the quarter, up Chimekowe and come down there. It was going with a high speed. And then after it leave and go in the other side. On the other end, Chimekowe area and come Chimekowe area and come by us.
Okay, so your house was flooded yesterday, is that it?
Yes, my house was flooded.
And when you look at the area, what was there, my mother's house was right on the side there, the neighbor house there, and people around there. Oh, you know, Cheryl?
That's nice.
Yes, yes. I mean, just unbelievable.
You said your mother's house was
right
just there?
There, so
right where, right?
Right in the river there.
Right in the river there. So basically by where we see the big stone up there, by where the lady passing there?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then what happened to the house then?
Well, it went.
And there's no sign of the house at all?
No sign of the house. It's scraps along the place. You see galvanized. No sign of the land. No sign of even the lot that was there.
Wow. Okay, and there was another house, you said, somewhere on the other side?
There, which is on the line. Right here.
Oh, that's Shamin's house there?
Shamin's house, yeah. Oh. You can see on the stove and the wood around it. I mean, look, you see the water right under in the cellar there?
Okay.
So it's severely undermined.
Wow.
They're now mopping up and trying to salvage something.
Wow.
And you look at the market area, I mean, the market has sufficient road space. You have some land around the market. Now the river is almost in the market.
I think in the
Yes, it's in the market.
So what do you think needs to be done then?
Well, I think people have to pick up the pieces and help one another, and then come together. It's always community effort to do things. And later on, I guess the authorities will bring in the heavy equipment to probably reposition the stones and redirect the river. But for the time being, I think people have to help one another.
Okay. The thing here is that we're watching an area that looks like a pile of stones, but actually used to be a lot with a house on it. And the side of the road, which was like a road by looking like part of a riverbed. I think it's amazing if you don't know the place before.
All we've got to do is give a helping hand to clean up the debris.
normally the Wasco prepares for storms, hurricanes, that are predicted and that are expected to affect Dominica. We prepare long in advance. We have a disaster management plan that speaks to the things that we need to do in preparation for those disasters. So we advise customers accordingly to store water. We take steps also to shut down the systems when there is a disaster that is imminent, so that immediately following the disaster, once the pipelines remain intact, we can restore water to communities. What has happened in this case really is that it was something that came on us unannounced. So we were not totally prepared for something like that. It's what I refer to as a flash flood. And so the Wasco was not prepared, put it this way, for that. So what we had to do was to move in immediately after, when the water subsided a bit and persons could access the various areas, to assess the damage that was done to the Wasco's pipelines and to service connections for persons and so forth. What we found out too is that there were a number of pipelines in rocky areas across ravines serving persons, and a lot of those were washed away. Some major supply lines were also broken in the Layu area, in Massacre and in Mahaut, and those had to be restored, but we had to wait until the river subsided. Secondly, we had to wait and to depend to allow the Public Works Department to do what was necessary, do some excavation along the riverbed and do some mitigation works there before all men could go in as well and restore those lines. We took the opportunity, however, to reorganize some of the pipelines, to shift some, and we'll continue to do so. But we did suffer significant damages in the Benawavin area, in Massacre, in Mahaut, and of course in Layu. And those are lessons for us, as we went along. We tried not to put our men at risk, too much unnecessary risk, but we recognized too that persons needed water, and so we tried to work expeditiously to restore water to most of the communities. And one of the lessons we have learned from something like that, and I'm sure many persons as well, is that as consumers, all of us, we have to be prepared for those eventualities. We emphasize those during the hurricane season, and we emphasize those when there are pending storms and so on. But throughout, it may be even be a drought or flash floods of that nature. Persons have to prepare themselves to deal with those kinds of eventualities and to go through them without disrupting their livelihoods unnecessarily. One of the things people can do to safeguard against those things is to keep some water in storage. We rely heavily on surface water in Dominica, and you know what happens to surface water at those times. It gets very, very turbid, very brown, dirty if you like. So we advise persons to keep some water in storage. I'm not suggesting to everybody that to go and buy a 600,000 or 1,000 gallon storage tank. For persons who can do that, very well. But for persons who can afford a 45 gallon drum, a plastic drum, it is excellent once it's covered and they take necessary precaution to treat the water after for domestic use. That would certainly help. A few buckets of water would help, because we all know the inconvenience of not having water to flush your toilets, even not as regularly as you would like, but at least if you have some, you can be a little more sanitary, or make your homes a little more sanitary, and you can cook your food and do certain things. So clearly one of the lessons coming out of that is the need for us to always have some water in storage, irrespective as to whether we think something is going to happen or not.
The events of September 28th, the floodings associated with the west coast of Dominica as a result of Tropical Storm Ophelia, poses a number of questions, and a number of lessons can be learned from such events. We will well be aware that the world is going through a process or transition where we have a number of disaster events happening all over the world, from severe storms to earthquakes, etc. And Dominica, as we noted, is no exception. We have to understand the vulnerability of a country like Dominica. And it is important when we have events like this for us to reflect on the issues and what we can learn from these events. Questions like the early warning system, the warning mechanism, our land use policies, preparations by individuals, etc., would come straight into focus. How do we mainstream as a country into the whole process of disaster management? What is the percept for disaster risk reduction as we tie in disaster risk reduction into development of a sustainable small developing state like Dominica? These angles we need to really pay attention to. Let us, for example, look at the issue of the early warning system and take a closer look at Tropical Storm Ophelia. We were affected by basically one band of cloud coming from the west and affecting the mid section of the country, let us say from the Canefiled area up to about St. Joseph, while the other areas of Dominica were scot-free. The forecast from rainfall from Ophelia was between 3 to 4 inches. That's the forecast by the National Hurricane Center. However, information from the Meteorological Service of Dominica indicate that in the areas of Pocasset and Springfield, from their rain gauges, it indicated that we received between 10 to 12 inches of rainfall. What does that say? It tells us that the forecasts are really estimates of what can happen, and other events can contribute, and as a result we could be dealing with situations that are a lot severe than what was actually forecasted. The lessons to be learned from that is that we must be in a state of preparedness all the time. And how do we get prepared for those things? How do we manage early warning systems? There must be some sort of interpretation in everybody's mind as to what are the meaning of a number of inches, what's the meaning of floods, etc. Yes, we may say that Dominica, we're not accustomed with floods, but we can see with the turn of events that we really have to put our minds together and understand those events. That being said, though, we must start thinking of what are the plans. There must be a holistic approach to disaster management. Disaster management must be of everyone's business. And we must start at the family level. At the family level, we must have plans. Who would be responsible to do whatever activity in the case of a warning for a storm, etc. However, we will also have to remember that there may be events that we may not be able to get early information from, and as a result we also need to make plans for this. So the families must come together and put their plans together so that everyone would know what their responsibilities would be. Then we go to our workplace. What is at our workplace? Are we cognizant with the disaster plans that are in our workplace? Do we know what we would have to do if a severe earthquake strikes and we're at work? So here we're talking now about the plans at the workplace. Then at the community level, each community we encourage should have a disaster committee. We work very hard with the local government and put those committees in place. Everyone should know who the members of the disaster committees are. Then you have the disaster committee, they would have their plans for evacuation, etc. Then we do it at the district level, and then we come with the same model, and we have the same model for disaster management at a national level. If we can get these plans organized in such a way, then we know from the ground up we are already prepared. Unlike if the Office of Disaster Management would have national plans and it doesn't filter in. So we have to have the ground up approach. We're doing a lot of work in these areas, and that is what we really want to see going forward. The whole idea of disaster tourism is one we need to pay particular attention to, and persons may ask, what is disaster tourism? We're talking here about persons responding and sightseeing after events. This really puts a damper on the response mechanism. For example, you may have long lines, roadblocks, etc., because you have too many persons out in their cars trying to see, and the response teams, the excavators, backhoes, etc., may get a lot of difficulty to get to the area. So we always encourage people, let the response mechanism take place. Stay home, stay safe, and let persons who have to respond be out there doing what they have to do. Because a lot of time it just slows down the process, and sometimes in that process, persons are really endangering themselves by going in these areas. When we look at areas that are flooded, sometimes people cross ravines in floods and so on, not aware of what is in the water or how deep the water is. So we always ask persons that the safety mechanism must trigger in, and you must be able to stay away from these areas before we add to these things. But of significance in disaster management is the whole idea of mitigation. Our whole practices, what do we do? Do we keep our drains clear? Are we now building too close to the ravines? Are we narrowing those channels so much that when we get the severe downpours, that the water has absolutely nowhere to go? So areas which were never flooded before, with the same amount of rainfall, will now be flooded. We have to now think as to what we're doing. What are the practices? Are we blocking the drains because of poor disposal of refuge? And then we now have nature fighting against us. So these are some of the things that we really have to look at. And we have to understand that some of those events will come upon us unexpectedly. We will not always have significant time for warning.
First time I see that in my life, I'm 42 years since I'm out. First time I see that.
C'est pas Tiglo no more with Toby Dominic and no flood. Remember?
You talking to me?
No, I'm talking to Thaddeus.
When I'm talking to Theophas, this body that he created, Dominic, built within it natural drains cause a glocani descend and la mer doucement.
But man again, il y a voltige végété le sta concrete.
Avec sable, avec toute qualité bagay, nasty in our rivers and our drains.
And Philip, Patrick, Patricia, Lucia. As for those old stove and fridge, you can even voltage in the bought flashes of lay.
If you see, I had the power to put on a light switch now. Would they get away? Valet vieux fridge, valet TV qui can come only in valleys and rivers and ravines all around Dominica.
And so the same old mentality of fling, fly, voltige and jeter, n'importe place, that have to stop.
You see you, Theophas, you should have your food. If you have to go in Roseau, N'importe la you have to put your rubber boots.
And what happened in Mahaut, Massacre and Layo shows clearly that our rivers, valleys and our ravines will not take it no more. Safini, Hypopwaze, they will retaliate. Because a tout power la ukatan about Dominica is a mountainous country and we cannot have flood. Who fool you?
That is a thing of the past.
All the way past.
A message from the Office of Disaster Management in Dominica.